Alright guys, throughout the series I do a few interviews with people that are overseas. Unfortunately I have to do them via WhatsApp. Obviously, as you can see, we live up the side of a Bavarian mountain. My technical abilities are not the greatest, so please excuse the fact that these interviews are done basically holding my phone up. I do my best. With the sound quality. We've got a little microphone there, but we do have a bit of internet lag sometimes, and I do ask that you bear with me because although these interviews may not be, screen recorded Skype and stuff like that, which I just can't for the life of me get to work. And the people I talk to, they're not really technically savvy people as well. So we've done these interviews via WhatsApp, one via Messenger, and please bear with us because it's the content that's important. And throughout this video series, we really want to encourage people to go out and seek their own knowledge. We want to explain as much as anything why knowing these things is important, why it's important to have a bit of research behind it. And if we were to make videos on all of these things, they would literally go for months. Saddle fitting, I've invested years of my life in. And the saddle fitter that we're about to speak with, she's invested her life in saddle fitting. I think she's incredible. She talks a really good game on Facebook, which really, really impresses me because she says things that people don't like to hear. So mad respect for her. And I would just, again, please bear with me. I know some of my content is, I don't have $8 grand worth of camera equipment and an editing studio. I'm doing it all on my phone. So yeah, enjoy. Steph, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
I am Steph Bloom. I'm a saddle fitter in the UK. I've been a saddle fitter for 15 years. Fitted one brand for a long time, but already kind of stood out from other saddles, I guess, and more and more so. So yeah, I'm probably a little bit keyboard warrior on the saddle fitting front.
Okay, so as a saddle fitter, like what is it you do, and why is it needed?
Okay, I'm probably going to refer people. I'm figuring that any channel is going to be putting the horse at the centre of things. They've come in here to get answers, and they're really going to be horse centric. So I'm going to say let's do interesting stuff, and that I would recommend they go and Google. I know that you've got a background with people like Jochen Schlazer. You can find 9 points to saddle fit, and there's tons of others. We talk about why we do it for the horse. Carriers. I know you'll be talking about this a lot with all of your work. And saddle fitting is only ever mitigation. So we can only ever minimise the damage that we do. It's a fact. We've viewed it in different ways, I guess, as to how best. And there are still many different opinions. Hence, I have a whole blog post called "Why Saddle Fitters Want to Breathe," and I think there are a lot of all sorts of saddle fitting questions. And generally, the biggest answer is it depends, which is kind of universal for the horse world, I reckon.
Yeah.
So, if we look at it in the basics, horses change shape, and that's why we have to check the saddle.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more, especially in regards to long riding. They're constantly changing shape. So how often do you recommend just normal people get saddle fit checked? And how often should someone such as myself get it checked?
Oh, any difficult question. If you view saddle fitting as somebody provides you with a saddle, and then you get them a bit like having a car service, you instead of giving you peace of mind to tick it and go, yeah, you're fine for a year, then that to me doesn't exist. Just doesn't exist. So some will say get it, yeah, some will say every 6 months. The people who are probably having the best success with progressively improving their horses are not doing that. They might be getting their saddle checked 4 times a year. They might even be getting it checked more often than that. I reckon that riders in the big sports, they've probably got the fitter coming to the barn, to the yard, every 6 weeks maybe, and then needs a saddle check, which needs it adjusted. Most of us can't afford that. So to me, it's all about the partnership between saddle fitter, looking at what the rider's doing with the horse, what type of saddle it is, and therefore what checks are needed. So a flock saddle, different approach to some kind of flexible saddle. And then how much can the owner do?
Yeah.
Timbers and adjusting. Sure, the owner can't always adjust it depending on what the saddle is, but they need to know when.
Yeah.
When they need some help.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, for long riding, I know that you check your horse, and the saddle is pretty inanimate. It's not got flocking in it. But, you're checking your scenario every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I recommend you that, monitoring your own horse, monitoring your own saddle fit, then you're probably talking kind of once a week, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
it's
amazing how much a horse can change in 6 weeks. Like, I mean, especially coming out of winter or going into winter, a horse can really change shape. And another thing is the amount of exercise it gets. 2 weeks of hard work on a horse, its cardio goes from non-existent to right where it should be. And after sort of 4 weeks to 6 weeks, that's when you really notice those muscular changes. Yeah. So
and people go, oh well, my horse hasn't changed shape. It doesn't look like he's changed shape. And you go, yeah, but do you remember, like, say with a flocked saddle, and I put a handful of flocking in, and you remember the difference it made?
Yeah.
So I'm not wanting to see change in your horse, a big enough change to affect the saddle. You're not always going to see it, and frequently you're not. And then we look, it can change from first thing in the morning, if he's been out all night, stick him in a stable during the day or vice versa, and his shape will be very different in the evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
During the day.
Well, we watched our stallion lose 15 kilos just from being dehydrated.
Yeah, and endurance riders, they're having shimmed pads provided at their vet.
Yeah.
So they're getting, to 30 miles or 40 miles, and they're putting on a different number, a different saddle pad, with something to lift the front, often as not.
Yeah.
So yeah, they change shape really fast.
Yep, absolutely. So there's a bit of a cost to getting a saddle fitter out. But what sort of cost are we looking at in terms of damage to a horse if we ignore getting a saddle fitter out and just chuck the same saddle on every month of the year?
Yeah, we just talked about a very low-cost option, which is to learn, as the owner, what you're looking for. So you only get the fitter out. You don't have any wasted calls, but there are never any wasted calls in my mind, because it's always good to have a saddle fit checked off. Get up to speed. This isn't necessarily going to cost you a huge amount. But yeah, the cost of getting a saddle fitter out, I mean, if things go wrong, we go with us, we're talking vet bills, all sorts for that. But essentially, when we're talking a mitigation job, then as I'm moving quite right, I'm not even talking about causing remotely a saddle sore or even a sore spot on the horse's back. But say the saddle for your horse to move well, and you ignore that for a while. You leave the saddle how it is. You don't do anything else. Still back to the shape he was when the saddle did fit.
Yeah.
You've let it kind of roll. Well, you're going to run into all sorts of biomechanical issues, using himself properly. So suddenly you've got a whole run of problems that have popped up. And if you're barefoot, you might have affected the feet, doing a compensatory pattern. And so the world's your oyster when it comes to what costs you might run up through not keeping an eye on your own saddle fit. And that's necessary.
Yep. Absolutely agree with you there. And it's very easy to absolutely destroy a horse and damage a rider by not having the correct saddle. I mean, one of the reasons why I built mine was every time I saw a wolf, I'd go to jump off the Mongolian saddle and I couldn't walk because my body was just in so much pain from having ridden in that bloody torture device for the last hour or two.
Yeah.
Now, as far as modern saddles go, English saddles, Western saddles, I strongly feel they follow fashion, not fit. I think we're bound by a lot of tradition, and I honestly think a lot of English saddles represent a torture device for the horse and rider. How do you feel about me saying that?
Our first interactions online was about that, and I know you have quite strong feelings about English saddles. I would argue that there are a minority of any type of saddle truly fits the horse.
Yep.
Because what's our standard? What's our, and what are we ticking off to try and say, well, that doesn't. So I think there's a lot of fashion. I'm really only in the English space, so I large saddles as an extreme. People are more concerned about having some crocodile skin and some Swarovski crystals and having the latest brand than what do I need to achieve for horse and rider to be as optimized as possible. One of my mentors uses is optimization. So you were talking about rider pain. So even if the saddle fits the horse, but the rider's had an injury, if they keep riding with that injury, then that's going to affect the horse.
Yep.
So the rider straightens the rider's tension. So if you're not comfortable, you will eventually affect the horse, and it may not take that long. I like to fit with an eye to which saddle does the horse prefer? What allows the rider free to ride in a way that gives them pelvic stability? I mean, that's a whole huge topic, but stability in the pelvis without restrict. Because once we can get you to those kind of places, the saddle is going to really help you. If the horse can, the model I use isn't, so utilize its pelvis to be able to actually stop itself falling forward, which I think is a better expression than being on the forehand. How can it start rotating the rib cage? And the rider is a meter, give or take, lever on the top of that rib cage.
Yep.
So if the rib cage is rotating, we're going to be affecting the forehand. The forehand cannot push up, and the front legs should push up. Don't select saddle that helps your horse to move most efficiently in whatever you do. Now, you're doing long riding. Some people are, working on certainly more than they should, but they need to execute high-level dressage moves. So how does your saddle help you to help your horse to move correctly? And that is really all that matters. And what your saddle looks like is either unimportant, or we should just try and get rid of all of that. I strongly believe we want to provide, different colours and different contrast stitching. But fundamentally, let's try and remember why we're doing it.
I could not agree with you more on all of that. That's absolutely my feelings exactly, and that's why my saddles are all a bit ugly duckling, but the horses move beautifully in them. So, final question, which is a question I ask pretty much everyone when it comes to saddles, is how much weight is a horse designed to carry, and what's the best saddle?
So, rider weight it's a really challenging one, and I think we have to look at what you're doing and for how long and how regularly. But we also don't dwell on the horse enough. Is how well has the horse been conditioned? And your work, you've got very specific your training programs, your conditioning programs. I would argue for dressing, where we're pushing the envelope in short spaces of time. So we're trying to get the horse to function at this amazing level because we're asking so much of them. Then it's going to be a different answer to what you're doing, essentially. But how the rider's weight's carried too. So total rider weight, including saddle, we talk about 15%, we talk about 20%. Have a horse that is at all compromised, 15% might be too much. Any percent might be too much, and you probably should be doing groundwork up through the base of the wither, through the thoracic sling, which is what lifts beforehand. It can't do that if you haven't conditioned it well, so putting any weight on could be detrimental. Getting through to the 20%, then 20% including saddle on a healthy horse that's not overweight itself. We could argue that we should take any amount that they're overweight by and add that side of the equation, which people don't think about. So healthy weight of horse, well-conditioned horse, doing the discipline it's been conditioned for, and with a really well, so fits the rider. It's a hell of a checklist. Then I'm sure 20% is fine. But we must look at, so that's the horse. and how consistent it is. How well is it moving? Then we have to look at the load the rider. Because if all we do is try and lower the PSI, I know you talked about PSI, pounds per square inch under the saddle, and if you're riding around the lanes in walk for an hour every day or more, then you've got on your horse's back. So that's kind of a different consideration as well. You never get the blood flow back. So you probably need to be lighter if you're going out walking all the time and you can't trot or canter. So that's another. But the rider, if they are not optimized, if they are not stable, if they are not carried in the right place on the horse, then again, it needs to be lower. And to me, the rider's weight is best carried towards the base of the wither. Now, some people say it will sit if you ride bareback. But the horse's rib cage has an effect on where we sit. So still, the base of the wither is generally the best place to load. It's over, and I need to get this right. So if you say central gravity, it's not technically really central gravity. It's central mass, which are pretty much the same place. And then if we are asking probably more in the short term, the horse, like I was saying, the high activities, we probably want the rider carrying as much of their own weight over their own feet as possible. So if they're sat significantly behind a riser or posting trot, they're going to land heavily. And again, we're talking physical forces. So if a rider's landing heavily, then they probably need to be lighter than a rider that is landing more gently. So there is total weight. It's a really, really complex one, and we're still learning. But I see the difference in the effort of horses where they base the rider correctly at the base of the wither, where they're in what we call neutral pelvis, neutral spine, and they've got their feet pretty much underneath their hip.
Yep.
The horse can move without effort, can lift and push up in front, and the horse becomes straighter, more maneuverable, and everything has much greater ease. So, huge answer to a huge question. What's the best saddle? There isn't one. It's a magic saddle. It's the owner that wants you to come out once a year, tick the box, say your saddle fits. They want the answer for what the saddle is. Depends on so many things. And
Excellent.
I fit trees. I fit two types of trees. They fit very differently to each other, and I can get results with all three of them depending on what the requirements of the horse and rider are. So we go from really flexible treeless bareback pads, which have certain things, through to a full-on dressage saddle for people riding classical dressage at the top level compared to and then we have what you do, which is very, very different. And you will have all your own requirements of a long ride saddle. So, no magic answers. Again.
Yeah. And look, I think this is really why I wanted to talk to you, because to say saddle fitting is a black art, I don't think is correct. It is definitely a science, but the variables are so infinite for us. The variables in what the rider wants to do, the variables in the rider's physical attributes, the variables in the rider's ability. Then there's the variables in the horse. Then there's the variables in the environment that you're riding in, the time of year, the season, the food the horse is eating. So the best thing that I recommend to everyone when it comes to saddle fit is talk to a professional. Pay to get a saddle fitter out. Upskill yourself, constantly upskill yourself. I would say rather than going down the rabbit hole online, because there's a lot of rabbit holes going in a lot of different directions, find a fitter you trust and get their advice as to what to research. Would you agree with me on those things?
Yeah, it's a lot. Saddle fitting is a relationship. There's three of you in the relationship. The horse has got to have at least as big a voice as the ride. But yeah, find somebody who resonates with you. So I've even done a series of blog posts on how to choose a saddle fitter, and it's horribly in depth. It's like it's huge, but it's really important that you can ask questions, get them answered in a way that you can understand. Get backup that won't necessarily just be about the have to look at the horse saddle rider equation. And work with somebody who will show you this stuff, who will help you know what to look for in your own to be able to check your own saddle within, you're not going to be able to check it in the way that the saddle fitter does. But like I say, monitor your saddle
Yeah.
call the fitter. And look at their paradigm, their model of saddle fitting. And if it's something that makes sense to you, their approach, don't think that the fact that saddle fitters don't agree as being proof that the industry stinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't stink. It faces a lot of challenges. It faces a lot of lack of understanding on the rider's side.
But the entire equestrian industry does. I mean, the entire equestrian industry is full of strong opinions, poorly educated people that have watched a bunch of YouTube videos that think they know everything, and introverted professionals that are absolutely brilliant at what they do that are sick of being hacked on. So it is a very difficult environment for anyone to negotiate. Yeah. Well, Steph.
Yeah, and if I say that even, I've had this to me, why on earth are you doing a treeless saddle? So we turn on ourselves. We don't need to be turned on from outside as well, which we are all the time.
Yeah. Well, I cannot speak highly enough of every saddle fitter I've worked with. I've found you to be certainly one of the most vocal on Facebook when it comes to saying hard truths. And I've really respected that about you. I really respect your work. You're definitely one of my favorite people in the industry. So I'm really, really happy you gave me some time. Obviously, I don't want to recommend people just reach out to you and ask you a million saddle fit questions. But you're in Scotland, I believe, is where you're shifting your business to?
Yeah, so I'm still in England at the moment, but expect to be shifting to Scotland in the next few months. It's been a long and sorry tale.
Yeah.
I've got a blog where I kind of philosophize a little bit about saddle fitting, and I'm sure you'll put the link up for that.
Absolutely.
I follow my Facebook page, and hopefully people can glean a lot from there. But yeah, I do get a lot of requests for free information, and there's only so much take a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I recommend, I've got FAQs all sorts on my website.
Yeah. So I'll put some links up so people can find you. I've been Facebook stalking you, as you know, and quietly watching for over a year, and we've only started chatting recently. But I love your work, and I think there's a lot of horses out there that love your work too. So yeah, brilliant job, Steph. Thank you very, very, very much for your time today.
Talk to you.
Cheers.
Okay.